for having us.
Hello.
How are you?
Good, how are you?
Yeah, good.
Good.
You look like you wouldn't want to be anywhere else.
No,
Oh, never.
Hey?
Standing in front of the police station.
it's a glorious morning in Rock Vegas. Audio level testing 1 2, David Crisafulli and Dale Last testing 1 2 3 4 5. Well, the entire Shadow Cabinet has been here for a couple of days, and many will stay on. And we are determined to show Central Queenslanders that there is a better way. A way to ensure that we see an end to the housing crisis, to the cost of living crisis, the health crisis and the youth crime crisis. And today our Shadow Police Minister and I want to discuss the youth crime crisis, because yesterday when we spent considerable time door knocking in the local area, that issue came up time and time again. It's simply not good enough. A decision was taken 8 years ago to water down the laws, and on the back of it we've got a generation of untouchables. Young criminals who know that their rights outweigh the rights of the victim. And we will continue to put our solutions forward, including consequences for action, removing detention as a last resort and unshackling the judiciary, and above all, gold standard early intervention to turn the next generation of young crims around. We have some new figures today which are alarming. In the case of Rockhampton, the number of break-ins have increased by 38% on a 12-month calendar year from the first 7 months of this year, up by 38%. Across Queensland, we now have over 30,000 break-ins, and it's only been the first 7 months of the year. That's up again. How have we got to this point? Despite all of the promises, despite all of the parading and telling Queenslanders that the laws are up to scratch, Queenslanders are living a youth crime crisis. And we saw the other day the victims of crime march on Parliament, and we saw the government refuse to acknowledge how dire the situation is. I commit that we will have a victim on the sentencing advisory panel to make sure that there is someone who has lived experience, who has lived through the trauma of having their lives ripped apart. Queenslanders want to know that someone is listening to them, and we are listening. And we're determined to continue to put forward those solutions, because the youth crime crisis cannot go on. It is ripping communities apart in their homes, in their businesses, on their streets. It's ripping them apart every time they have to pay their insurance premiums, every time they tuck their kids to bed at night, to have to tell them that the safe space that was violated will be okay. And we deserve, Queenslanders deserve much better than what we are getting at the moment. And we are determined to show them that we are serious about healing the youth crime crisis. Dale, good morning.
Make no mistake, this youth crime crisis has occurred under the watch of the state Labor government. Right back in 2015, when they watered down their laws, that was the start of the spiral which has seen this state now degenerate into a youth crime crisis which is seeing figures which are absolutely horrendous. And it seems that this government only acts when there's bad news or when there's a protest rally out the front of the Queensland Parliament. And that's no way to govern this state, and it's no way to address this youth crime crisis which is occurring in this state. And I always say, and I will continue to say, that behind every crime is a victim. All those break and enters, all those unlawful use of motor vehicles, there is a victim of crime. And in a lot of those cases, it is having an absolutely horrendous impact on their lives. And in some cases, it's destroying businesses. Families are absolutely fed up. They're moving. They're making a conscious decision to move towns out of fear that they're going to be targeted again. It has to stop. This government needs to start listening, and that's what we're doing here in Rockhampton. Yesterday and today is going around and we're talking to business owners, we're talking to homeowners and residents about the impact that crime's having on their lives. And they are so grateful that someone is taking the time to come to this community and listen to them, to take on board their concerns. And as I always like to say, I will be their voice in the Queensland Parliament, because the local members are not standing up for this community. And it's about time they recognised that, and it's about time that message got back to the Premier and the relevant ministers in this government to do something about this crime in Queensland before it gets to another whole level, which we don't want to get to.
Over to you guys.
You mentioned a plan that the LNP has.
Yeah.
crisis and some like preventative measures
Yeah.
in particular. Why is that?
Well, I'm serious about that. And I want to make sure that Queenslanders know that we will rewrite the Youth Justice Act and we're going to have consequences for action, and things like detention as a last resort will be removed. But I also want Queenslanders to know that I'm keen on turning around kids as well. And I want to make sure that Queenslanders know that we will be a strong government and there will be consequences for action, but we will also do all we can to be compassionate and be able to turn kids around before a lifetime of crime. And that's the balance that needs to be found. And at the moment, the state government is failing young offenders and the community at both ends of the spectrum. And the greatest proof of that is that the number of hardcore repeat offenders has gone from 10% to 20% in a little over a year. So that shows you that what they are doing is failing both to deal with the hardcore repeat offenders, the ones that are holding the knives, the ones that are ramming the police car, but they're also failing to stop that pipeline of the next generation. And we intend to address the youth crime crisis at both ends of the spectrum.
And you also spoke about how residents aren't feeling safe in their communities. How are you going to ensure that this is going to change?
Well, by making sure that there are consequences for actions and turning young kids around. And yesterday I spent some time with Nigel Hutton, door knocking in North Rockhampton. And there was a story that really rocked me, where a resident said, oh look, I've been broken into and that's terrible, but I'm the lucky one. My neighbour's been broken into a few times. How on earth have we reached the point in Queensland where somebody feels lucky if they've only been broken into once? That's the result of watered down laws. That's the result of 202 fewer police. That is the result of 8 years that have created a generation of untouchables because of watered down laws. Fewer police, weaker laws. Is it any wonder Queenslanders are marching on Parliament? Is it any wonder Queenslanders are living through a youth crime crisis?
I have a few questions from Brisbane.
Yes.
So most of this group will meet with the government and police officials tomorrow. Should the government support the group's proposal for an independent committee to tackle youth crime?
Good governments listen and good governments act. And I've said to the Voice for Victims when I met them on that day that I want to continue to meet them and meet them regularly. And I want to give them a seat at the table. And I'm hell-bent on making sure that victims have a role in turning around the youth crime crisis. And I commit to making sure that there is a victim on the Sentencing Advisory Council to make sure that there is someone who has walked in the shoes of victims. Now, I used my budget reply speech to highlight that it had been over a year and the government hadn't appointed a Victims Commissioner yet. Now, I welcome that appointment. Whilst it's taken 15 months, I welcomed that appointment a couple of days ago. But it has to be more than a Victims Commissioner. We also need a victim on the Sentencing Advisory Council, and we need stronger laws to make sure there are less victims to have to deal with. And I commit to a whole range of those preventative measures and the strong front-ending to make sure that this generation of untouchables are held accountable and that the next generation are prevented before they become hardened criminals.
And apologies if you already touched on this, but do you believe there should be a royal commission of youth crime, even if it dates back to when the LNP was in power?
I just want to make sure that Queenslanders are safe. And whatever means we can do to make sure that Queenslanders feel safe in their homes, in their businesses, on the streets, we should look at. And right now, the spotlight has to be on falling police numbers, weakened laws, a generation of untouchables, and Queenslanders who are living through that fear. Now, I raised that figure before. Think about this for the Rockhampton community. The number of break-ins has increased by 38% in the first 7 months of this year. 38%. That is creating a whole generation of Queenslanders who fall victim to the youth crime crisis who deserve so much better. And when that is occurring, that is impacting you in every facet of your life. It costs you more for your insurance. It means that you're probably having to get taxis or Ubers or having to get a hire car because your car gets pinched. You have to go through all the rigmarole to get it replaced. Your special space has been violated at home. All of those things matter. And Queenslanders don't want to see another generation of statistics. And that's why this is important to us.
Yeah, sorry, I just have one more for
Yeah.
So what do you think of reports that Labor has hired Dan Andrews, marketing guru, for Anastasia Palaszczuk's next election campaign?
The more I see of the Palaszczuk government, the more I see a government that aligns with Daniel Andrews' values and failures. And if they want to have the same person selling that message, I'll be reminding Queenslanders of how bad this government has been in delivering frontline services, and how the things that they are seeing in Victoria unfold now will await Queenslanders if we don't stop a fourth term of a very bad government.
Have you finalised your election strategy team, and who will be in charge?
Queenslanders will be in charge, and I want Queenslanders to understand that we are driven by the things they are telling us. That's what drives us. And when I talk about my priorities, I talk about an economy built on the back of small and family business, service delivery so that no matter where you live you get world-class services, and integrity in government. And they are the priorities that have come to me, not by strategists, but by listening to Queenslanders. And I'm serious about turning around those failures. And I'm serious about making sure that when you pick up the phone and AMBO turns up in your hour of need, that there are more blue uniforms, not less, and the laws that are needed to be able to hold people accountable. And I want to see young people be able to afford to buy a home, and I want the most vulnerable to have a roof over their head. That's what service delivery looks like to me. And those priorities have come to me by listening to Queenslanders, not listening to pollsters who work for Daniel Andrews and other spin doctors. That's not my priority.
There's reports been released today that show some households will be saving $1,000 on their power bills by switching retailers.
Yeah.
Some of the ways retailers have been struggling with customers. Do you think the government needs to step in when it comes to rising costs and keeping increased?
I commit to having a maintenance guarantee when it comes to our energy plants in this state. And that is the only way that we can turn around the underlying reason why electricity prices keeps going up, and that is because the supply issues. And it's been 2 years now since the two major power plants in this state went offline, and despite numerous deadlines that have been broken, they still remain offline. And that is the reason why Queensland electricity prices have gone up by more than anywhere else in the country. That is the reason why Queenslanders are struggling to pay their power bills and therefore struggling to keep a roof over their head. And I commit to making sure that there is a maintenance guarantee to get those power plants back online. And my commitment is that electricity needs to be affordable, reliable and sustainable. They are the three elements of good, affordable energy use in this state, and right now it's not happening. Yes, that case rocked the state, and to see what's coming out of it is something that troubles Queenslanders. And when we spoke about it at the time, what really troubled me is that it appeared that the state knowingly referred it to a body that couldn't properly investigate it, and it is clear that those teenagers were failed, and rather than try to improve the system, the state government tried to push it to one side so that it wasn't an issue, a political issue. And some good must come from this heartache, and that good is the reform to the system. And you know that case was troubling. Yeah.
Do you apologise for any failures or inaction under the Newman government?
Yep.
As well?
Any child who was failed deserves an apology. Any family that was let down deserves to know that their leaders commit to doing better. And it doesn't matter how far that stretches back. Those families and those kids are owed it. And I can commit to this. We have to make sure that these failings never happen again. And we have to make sure that our child safety system is properly resourced, that children don't continue to fall through the cracks, and we have to make sure that the spotlight is put on that no matter how far back that goes. We have to do better. And to know that the state's response to this was to refer it to the Queensland Family and Child Commission, a body that could not do anything about it, shows that it was more about political preservation for the government than looking after vulnerable kids, and Queenslanders are better than that.
Recommendations include better training for frontline staff, giving people with disability a greater say in the development and review of child protection practices and policies, among others. Do you think these recommendations go far enough?
They're very sound recommendations, and what it shows is that we need better resources, we need people who have lived experience to help shape policy, and above all we need to be compassionate. And if you're compassionate and you're prepared to allow the failings to be shown and improvements to be made, well, that's when change will be driven. When governments are more obsessed with how things look rather than driving that real change, precious kids will continue to fall through the cracks, and we have to see an end to that.
And do you think the rubbish should be compensated?
Let's see where that all goes. Thank you all. Thanks very, very much. Thank you. For me or for Dale?
Sorry.
For me or for Dale? Righto, sure.
Just on some recent instances we're having in Rocky, do you think there's a bit of a domestic violence problem in Rockhampton?
Yeah, look, I'm mindful about how raw this is in the community at the moment, and I guess we have to do all we can to make sure that domestic violence continues to come out of the shadows, and when incidents like this occur, it really rips at the fabric of communities, but even more so when it happens in a smaller place. And I think it's important that this is an issue that right across the political divide, that we do all we humanly can to make sure that women and children are safe. Guys, thank you very much. Thank you. See you. Thanks very much.